She wasn't supposed to survive, left to bleed out in total darkness, but she did.
Authorities in Dickinson have launched an investigation after an 8-year-old girl was abducted from her home and left for dead in a remote field.
I knew I was dying. I could feel my body growing weaker, but inside there was this burning rage. I decided if I was going to die, I would do everything I could to make sure he was found.
Jennifer Schuett?
Yes.
Did you ever have occasion to come in contact with her?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
No.
The summer night in Dickinson, Texas, promised tranquility. It was August 1990, and in the home of 9-year-old Jennifer Schuett, everything seemed as usual. Her mother tucked her into bed, unaware that within hours their lives would be forever altered. Jennifer lived with her mother in a ground-floor apartment. Their small town was peaceful and safe, so the windows remained open, allowing fresh air to drift in. This very detail would prove fateful on that dreadful night. As the night edged toward dawn, an intruder crept into Jennifer's room. She awoke with an eerie sensation. Someone was near. In the next instant, a large, rough hand clamped over her mouth, silencing any chance of a scream. A strange man loomed over her, reeking of sweat and cigarettes. He whispered threats, his voice a menacing hush, before lifting her from the bed and carrying her out into the night. Terror paralyzed her small frame. She could not fight back. The man moved swiftly toward a car parked nearby and shoved her inside. Jennifer's heart pounded violently. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks. She wanted to scream, to cry out for help, but fear had stolen her voice. Meanwhile, in the next room, her mother slept soundly, unaware that her daughter was gone. No one saw the man. No one heard a thing. When morning came, Jennifer's mother entered her daughter's room, only to find an empty bed. At first, she assumed Jennifer had gone to the bathroom or the kitchen, but as she searched the apartment, dread tightened around her heart. The window stood open, wider than usual. A chill of realization coursed through her veins. She bolted outside, calling Jennifer's name into the still morning air. The commotion roused the neighbors. Several rushed to help, but there were no answers, only fear. Jennifer's mother dialed the police, her hands trembling. Panic gripped the household. How could a child vanish from her own bed without a trace? Officers arrived within minutes, scouring the apartment and questioning the neighbors, but no one had heard a cry or seen a shadow move in the dark. There were no signs of struggle, no clues left behind. Whoever had taken Jennifer knew exactly what he was doing. The car sped through the darkened streets of Dickinson, carrying Jennifer farther and farther from home. She sat stiffly in the passenger seat, afraid to move. The kidnapper gripped the wheel with one hand, the other occasionally stroking her hair. "Everything will be fine, sweetheart," he murmured. "Just do as I say." Jennifer had no idea where he was taking her. Fear coiled in her stomach like ice. Through the window, she memorized everything she could: the glow of streetlights, the twists and turns of the road, the few passing cars that never stopped to notice her silent plea for help. The man soon veered onto a desolate gravel road, leading to an open field. The car rolled to a halt. He killed the engine and turned to her with a smirk. "You're mine now," he said. He yanked her from the car and dragged her deeper into the tall grass. The scent of damp earth mixed with the stench of his breath. Jennifer tried to fight, but she was too small, too weak. That night, she endured a nightmare beyond words. Pain, terror, and helplessness blurred into an unrelenting horror. Her body trembled, but her mind refused to shut down. When it was over, the man left her there, bleeding, broken. "No one will find you," he muttered before vanishing into the darkness. Jennifer was alone. The night wrapped around her like a shroud. Pain coursed through her battered body, but the fear was worse. She couldn't move. She couldn't cry out. It was as if an invisible hand had gripped her throat, silencing her completely. All she could do was wait. The sounds of the night surrounded her, the hum of insects, the whisper of grass swaying in the wind. Her thoughts swirled in a daze, but one came back again and again. No one will find me. But morning brought a miracle. A passerby, walking through the field, caught sight of something unusual in the grass. At first, he thought it was just a discarded doll, but as he stepped closer, he froze in horror. "Oh my God," he whispered, rushing to her side. Jennifer could not speak, but her eyes, pleading, desperate, met his. He immediately called for help. Minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance. Paramedics arrived, lifting Jennifer with the utmost care, wrapping her in a warm blanket. She remained silent, her fragile body trembling. But one thought pulsed through her mind: I survived. As she was rushed to the hospital, detectives scoured the crime scene. But the predator had left little behind. No fingerprints, no footprints, no evidence to follow. Meanwhile, Jennifer's mother arrived at the hospital. The moment she saw her daughter, her knees buckled, tears spilling freely. "My baby," she sobbed, grasping Jennifer's hand. But Jennifer only stared at the ceiling, unblinking. She would never be the same again. A heavy silence filled the hospital room. Jennifer lay motionless, her gaze fixed on the stark white ceiling. Her body ached, but the pain within her soul was far greater. Doctors and nurses spoke soothing words, but their voices blurred into a distant, indistinct hum. The police waited for the moment they could question her. But there was one problem. Jennifer couldn't speak. The attack had damaged her vocal cords. She tried to form words, but only a faint rasp escaped her throat. Yet silence did not mean she had forgotten. A few days later, a detective came to see her. He sat beside her bed, offering a gentle smile. "Jennifer, we want to find the man who did this to you. Do you remember what he looked like?" Slowly, she nodded. They handed her a piece of paper and a pencil. Her fingers trembled at first, but then she began to write. Letter by letter, word by word. White car, light brown hair, mustache. The detective read her notes carefully, nodding with encouragement. "You're doing great," he assured her. "We'll find him." The next step was creating a composite sketch. With a forensic artist at her side, Jennifer painstakingly described the man who had stolen her childhood. Her memory was astonishing. Days had passed, yet she recalled his features in chilling detail. The completed sketch was soon circulated across the state. Now all they could do was wait. But time passed, and no calls came. The kidnapper had vanished as if into thin air. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The investigation pressed on, but there were no breakthroughs. Jennifer's sketch was sent to police departments and printed in local newspapers, yet no one recognized the man with the mustache and light brown hair. Authorities combed through hundreds of white cars resembling the one used in the abduction. They questioned suspects, compared their appearances to Jennifer's description. But every lead turned to dust. Time marched forward, indifferent to unanswered questions. Jennifer returned home, but life as she knew it was over. She had to relearn how to speak, how to trust, how to sleep without fear. Nightmares haunted her, refusing to let her rest. Her mother never gave up hope. She made calls to the police, wrote letters to newspapers, pleaded for her daughter's case to remain open. "He's still out there," she insisted, "living his life while my little girl wakes up in terror every night." But without new evidence, the case began to grow cold. Years passed. Jennifer grew older, yet the fear never left her. She could still see his face, imprinted on her mind like a scar. She knew that one day the truth would surface. She just had to wait. Years drifted by. Jennifer learned to live with the memories, though they never loosened their grip. Time could not erase the face of her attacker, but law enforcement remained powerless to find him. However, science did not stand still. By the early 2000s, forensic technology had advanced. DNA databases were expanding, offering new hope for cases that had long gone cold. In 2009, detectives reviewing unsolved crimes decided to re-examine the evidence from Jennifer's attack. Biological samples collected from her body were sent for analysis. Weeks later, the results arrived. A DNA match had been found. The genetic profile belonged to a man already in the federal system, a 40-year-old named Dennis Bradford, previously convicted of kidnapping and sexual assault. At the time of the crime, he had lived in the same town as Jennifer, but years later, he had relocated to another state. Detectives wasted no time. After 19 years, Jennifer's attacker was finally identified. When she heard his name, a storm of emotions surged through her. Fear, anger, relief. "I want to look him in the eyes," she said. She had waited nearly 2 decades for this moment. Police officers arrived at a quiet home in North Dakota. Inside, Dennis Bradford was living an ordinary life, unaware that his past had finally caught up with him. When they presented the arrest warrant, he did not resist. He listened in silence, then gave a slow nod. "You found me," he murmured, as if he had always known this day would come. He was extradited to Texas, where he would face trial. By then, Jennifer was 29 years old. She had spent years preparing for this encounter. She had one question: why? But Bradford would never give her an answer. 6 months after his arrest, on the night of May 10, 2010, guards found him dead in his jail cell. He had slit his own throat, escaping justice one final time. When Jennifer heard the news, her reaction was calm. "He ran from justice," she told reporters, "but I won't let him take my story with him." She made a decision. She would speak. She would share her story so that other victims would know that even after years of silence, the truth could still win. With Dennis Bradford's death, there would be no trial, no testimony, no cross-examinations. For Jennifer, it was a cruel twist of fate. She had spent years waiting for the moment when she could stand before him, demand answers, make him face what he had done. Now that moment would never come. Still, law enforcement officially closed the case. The DNA evidence was undeniable. Bradford was her attacker. The man she had described as a child was the same man science had now exposed. Jennifer stood before the press, addressing not just reporters, but survivors everywhere. "I am living proof that you can survive the worst. I won't let what he did define my life. He thought he had destroyed me, but he was wrong." She refused to let her pain be in vain. She began working with the police, assisting in investigations and advocating for victims of violent crimes. She told her story so that others would not feel alone in theirs. Though Dennis Bradford had escaped earthly punishment, his name was forever marked in history, not as a free man, but as a monster unmasked. Jennifer, however, was something he could never be: a survivor. With the case officially closed, Jennifer made a choice. She would not live in fear. She was no longer a victim. She began speaking publicly, sharing her journey of survival and justice. She wanted others to understand that even in the face of unimaginable horror, hope could prevail. "I don't want anyone to feel as alone as I did," she told audiences. She built a new life, marrying, finding a career, embracing a future that once seemed impossible. Yet the past lingered, etched into the fabric of her existence. Some nights, she still woke in terror, the memory of that August night pressing against her chest. Some days her voice trembled as she recounted her story, but the most important thing was, she spoke. No evil would ever silence her again.